The calculator said the same thing it always said. Ray set it down on the kitchen table and rubbed his eyes and picked it up and did it again anyway, because maybe this time the numbers would land somewhere different. $1,100 coming in. Rent and the car and the insurance and the electric and the food that cost more every single week going out. And that thin, shrinking cushion of savings in between, the only thing standing between him and a cliff he couldn't see the bottom of. 64 years old, 40 years of work behind him, and the arithmetic gave him the same verdict it gave him every night, cold and flat and final. You cannot afford to stop. Not now, not ever. You know that math. A lot of you are doing it tonight at your own kitchen table with your own calculator, feeling that same knot pull tight in your gut. So before you do it one more time, I want to tell you what happened to the man at that table. Because 18 months later, Ray was standing on a balcony on the other side of the world, watching the sun come up over the mountains, living better on $1,000 a month than he ever managed on $4,000 back home. And no, he wasn't rich. He wasn't special. He didn't get lucky. He just did something most men only ever talk about. Let me show you exactly how. 40 years of honest physical work, the kind that pays your bills and quietly takes your knees as the price. 2 kids, grown and gone. A marriage that lasted a long time and then didn't. And at the end of all of it, when he added up what 4 decades had actually bought him, the answer was a Social Security check, a small pension, and a fear he couldn't shake. Because in America, $1,100 a month isn't a retirement. It's a slow-motion emergency, and Ray could see exactly where it ended. He could see the day the savings hit zero. He'd lie awake and watch it coming toward him in the dark. Then one of those sleepless nights, half desperate, scrolling on his phone at 2 in the morning, he found a sentence that stopped him cold. A man, older than him, saying he lived like a king in Thailand on less than what Ray was drowning under. Ray almost laughed it off. Almost. But the knot in his stomach didn't laugh. The knot wanted to know more. So he did the one thing that separates the men who make it from the men who get burned. He didn't sell everything and leap. He went and looked. He scraped the money together for 1 month, a real month, not a tourist week. He walked the ordinary streets, ate where the Thai people ate, not where the tour buses stopped, sat in the plastic chair of a real hospital waiting room just to watch how it worked, drank coffee with men who'd been out there 15 years and asked them everything. And somewhere in that month, for the first time in years, the knot let go, because he'd seen it with his own 2 eyes. It was real. All of it was real. He flew home, and he started giving his old life away. But here's where the dream almost died before it began, because it nearly did, and I won't pretend otherwise. The retirement visa. 50 and over, it lets you live in Thailand without working, but you have to prove it. Either 65,000 baht a month coming in, around $1,900, or 800,000 baht, $23,000, sitting in a Thai bank. And Ray had neither. His 1,100 didn't clear the income line, and he sure didn't have 23,000 lying spare. For about a week, that wall nearly stopped him. He sat with it, and then he understood something. The expensive life he was leaving behind, the car, the furniture, the garage full of 30 years of stuff he'd sworn he'd use one day, that was the 23,000. It had been sitting there the whole time, disguised as a life. So he sold it, all of it. The car, the tools, the couch, the lot. And he watched a lifetime of possessions turn into a number in a Thai bank account. A number that was still his, still sitting there as a cushion, and that unlocked the only door he needed unlocked. 2 suitcases, a one-way ticket, 65 years old. He picked Chiang Mai, and pay attention here because this single choice is the whole reason the math works. Not Bangkok, not Phuket, not the beach postcards that eat $1,000 and leave you hungry. A real city in the north, mountains on every horizon, temples on the corners, and a community of retirees who've been quietly living well on modest money for decades. And this is the life that $1,000 bought him. The first time Ray turned the key in his own door in Chiang Mai, he stood in the doorway and laughed out loud. Because the place in front of him, bright, clean, tiled floors, hot water, air conditioning, a pool glinting in the courtyard 3 floors down, cost him $200 a month, less than he used to pay just in property tax on the house he'd owned back home. 1 room, yes, but it was clean, it was safe, and every square inch of it was his. $200, that was rent. Then there was the food, and this is where he really started shaking his head. A bowl of noodles so good it embarrassed the restaurants back home, $1.50. A plate of rice and pork and a fried egg, cooked in front of him by a woman who'd learned his face, $2. He ate out for nearly every meal, ate like a king, and it came to $250 a month. In Thailand, cooking for yourself is often the expensive option. Let that sink in. He sold the car in America and never looked back. No payment, no insurance, no gas, no repairs, all of it gone forever. In Chiang Mai, he rented a scooter for $50 a month and filled the tank for pocket change. Now, a scooter at his age is a real risk, and I won't soften that. Helmet, license, no riding at night, never after a drink. The traffic takes lives out there. But ridden carefully on the quiet roads, it gave a 65-year-old man the freedom of an entire city for less than 1 tank of gas cost him back home. Utilities and fast internet, faster than he'd had in the States, another $60. $560. Rent, food, wheels, and power, and a man's whole life inside it. Which leaves the hard line, the one nobody honest can skip, health care. At 66, a full comprehensive policy can run $300 a month, and that alone would blow this budget to pieces. So I won't lie to you and pretend it fits. Here's what Ray actually did and what a lot of tight-budget expats do. He carried a cheaper policy for catastrophe, the surgery, the long hospital stay, the thing that could ruin him. And for everything ordinary, he paid cash, because ordinary care over there is almost unbelievably cheap. A doctor and a full blood panel, seen the same morning, $50 or $60 in his hand. The kind of visit that cost him hundreds back home with insurance after waiting 3 weeks for the appointment. It's a trade-off. It's not risk-free, and Ray made it with his eyes open. You'd have to make yours the same way, with real quotes for your real age. I won't dress that up for you. Add it all together, the room, the food, the scooter, the power, the health care, and Ray lives comfortably on right around $1,000 a month. And $1,100 comes in. Do you understand what that did to him? For the first time in 15 years, the tide stopped coming in. At the end of the month, there was a little bit left, not much. But after 15 years of watching the water rise toward his chin, it started finally to go back down. That's not a budget. That's a man handed back the ability to breathe. But the number was never really the point. The point was what the number bought that doesn't fit on any spreadsheet. He'd been afraid of the loneliness. Everyone is. A man alone, on the far side of the earth, knowing no one. But the retirees out there remember exactly what the first week feels like, and they pull you in. He found them at the coffee shops, at the pub quiz, at the Sunday breakfast that's met at the same cafe for 10 years. Inside 2 months, he had a standing card game and friends who noticed when his chair sat empty. And one ordinary Tuesday, the noodle woman on his corner started making his order the second she saw him rounding the street, and Ray realized he was already smiling before he'd even sat down. He stood there and tried to remember the last time he'd smiled walking down a street back home, and he couldn't. He genuinely couldn't remember. In America, at 64, he'd become invisible. Just another gray head the world looked straight through. In Chiang Mai, he was seen again. That doesn't show up in any budget. It might be the most valuable thing he found. The safety caught him off guard, too. He could walk home at 11 at night and never feel his shoulders climb toward his ears. That low, constant hum of watchfulness he'd carried so long he'd stopped noticing it. One day he realized it had simply switched off. But I promised you the truth, not a postcard. So here's the other side. The heat is real, and in the spring there's a burning season, a few weeks when the farmers set the fields alight and the air turns thick and gray and hard on the lungs. People with bad chests leave town for it. You should know that before you ever board a plane. And the distance from family, that's the real price, and it never goes away. Ray's kids and grandkids are on the far side of the world. He video calls every week, and it is not the same, and he knows it, and it aches, and no amount of money erases it. If something happens back home, he is a day of flying away. Every man who does this pays that, and he pays it forever. And you are a guest. Thailand owes you nothing. The men who show up demanding it bend to their old habits, turn bitter inside a year. The men who arrive humble, who know they're a guest in someone else's home, who understand that different is not the same as wrong, those are the men who thrive. That one shift is the whole difference between the ones who make it and the ones who limp home. So where did it leave Ray? 66 years old, a bright, clean room for $200 a month, food cooked fresh by someone who knows his face for the price of a coffee back home, a scooter, a card game, friends who'd notice if he vanished, a doctor the same morning he needs one, his cushion sitting safe in the bank, and at the end of every month, for the first time in 15 years, a little bit left over instead of a little bit gone. He is not rich. He was never going to be. But he took an income that was quietly killing him in one country, and he carried it to another where that exact same money bought a life worth waking up for. Same $1,100, two completely different worlds. I asked him once if he had any regrets. He was quiet a long time, and then he said just one. He wished he'd stopped waiting sooner, because the truth he'd been running from at that kitchen table, the thing all his desperate arithmetic kept circling, was that the plan back home was never going to work. The math was never going to add up. The rescue was never coming. And every year he spent waiting for it was a year of his one and only life he would never get back. Now let me be straight with you, because I care about the man watching this. Don't sell your house and jump on a plane because of a video. Not this one, not anyone's. Go and look first, the way Ray did. A month, 3 if you can. Walk the streets, eat the food, sweat in the real heat, and find the men who've been there 10 years and ask them what they wish they'd known. Get real insurance quotes for your real age. Get real visa advice from a real professional. The rules change, and I'm not your lawyer. Do the work, then decide. But decide. Because the most expensive thing in the world, the one thing you truly cannot afford, is another 10 years spent waiting for a rescue that is never coming. $1,000 a month. That's all it took to give one frightened, exhausted man his entire life back. The only question left is whether you'll keep telling yourself it's impossible, or whether you'll finally go find out, the way Ray did, that it never was. If this hit you where you live tonight, tell me down in the comments. What's your number, and what's the one thing holding you in that kitchen chair? I read every single one, and if it gave you even a flicker of something, hope or nerve, or just a reason to pick the calculator back up and run the numbers one more time, do yourself a favor and subscribe, because there's a lot more where this came from, and I'd be honored to have you along for the ride.